The Rough Drafts podcast is sponsored by Unicorn.com, the world's premier esport betting site. Log on today to bet on all your favorite esports titles at the simple click of a button. Choose your game, choose your team, earn unicorns, and who knows, maybe you'll earn enough to enter to win any number of fabulous prizes, such as Logitech peripherals or CSGO skins in their marketplace. Unicorn.com. Log on today.
Hello, Internet. This is Chase RedShirtKing Wassenar. I am a free agent head coach and analyst, as well as a contributor at Slingshot Esports. And welcome to our second live show that we have done throughout this World Championship Series. We are here to recap week 2 of the World Championship. What a crazy week. There were only 6 people who got the pick'ems 100% correct. I do not know the sobriety of those people at the time. That has not been confirmed. What has been confirmed is that we have a graveyard filled with teams that we did not expect, and we have a bracket stage filled with teams that are going to lead to some interesting semifinals moments, we'll say. I think that draw went in some really interesting ways. And to discuss all of it, the good and the bad, I am joined by my good friend and co-host, Walter Ceades Fedczuk. Walter, how you doing, man?
That draw is terrible for the final, for the actual championship game, but it's great for us that are going to be in New York City.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. The only part that disappoints me, and I think Edelweiss tweeted it out too, Barry, tweeted out, he's like, damn it, my floor seats are on Saturday, not Friday, and Friday would be the potential Rocks versus SKT game, and I'm in the same boat. So sorry, Barry. We're both going to be up in the nosebleeds for that series. But yeah. I don't think Riot wanted the script to be like that. I think their script writers were on lunch or something when that draw happened, because that was some bad juju.
I mean, the best part of it was them really trying to make it SKT versus Albus Nox Luna, and having them actually do the handshake, only to recognize that they just broke the rule they had just talked about literally 2 minutes ago. So they have to awkwardly go back, and suddenly it's like, oh, and it's H2K now, which to me was wonderful, because now we get to talk about the Chacarez tweet, where after Group C did its thing, you got to hear him. He just tweeted out, I'm calling this now. H2K draws Albus Nox Luna and loses. Save this tweet.
I don't care either way,
tweet, buddy.
I don't care either way, because I either get to watch Albus Nox Luna play at Madison Square Garden, or I get to see Forgiven. I'm on cloud 9.
Yeah, Cloud9 I think is on Cloud 9 as well. I mean, that's
with Samsung. I don't think so.
I mean, they still get to say that they were NA's last hope, and they did the job, unlike 2 other teams we'll talk about later. But we should start with the graveyard of the World Championship. Obviously, it would be nice if, I'm sure some teams would be like, oh man, why can't everyone move on? There's always that second edge of the story, right? Only half the teams can go on. There will always be losers to every winner. And we've got 8 losers to talk about. So let's get into it, Walter. We're going to start with the worst team at this tournament. From Group C, they went 1-5. They are INTZ. Are you disappointed with this performance, or was this kind of where you expected them to end up?
I mean, I'm not disappointed. I mean, they beat EDG. Like, they got one win. I guess for Brazil it's disappointing because they won 2 last year, and this year they only won 1. So obviously that can be looking at kind of a disappointment. But they beat EDG, which is one of the top 3 teams in the world. It was a really strong match, and my problem was just they sort of abandoned what they were good at the last 5 games. They stopped playing through Yang. They stopped really going super aggressive at that. I don't know why Revolta is ever being, ever getting put on Skarnar. It makes no sense to me. They really just abandoned what they were good at for the sake of some Worlds meta that clearly Albus Nox Luna just kind of ignored, and I think INTZ needed to ignore as well if they wanted to be successful. When you are not as good as other teams strategically, and it's a theory that's like in football. If you aren't as good as them, you got to drag them into the mud with you. You need to make the game as sloppy, as messy as possible, and that is why INTZ was so good in Game 1. It was a sloppy game. They dragged EDG down into the mud with them. They went after that weak point. They highlighted that weak point. They grabbed that weak point like a bone, and they were a pit bull, and they just would not let go. And and they were able to take advantage of it. And then the rest of the tournament, they didn't. They're like, oh, we beat EDG. We beat a top 3 team in the world. We can win this clean. Like, we can do this. And they didn't. So,
no, they didn't. And we said that after week 1. I mean, this is the thing that really disappointed me, is that week 1 taught them everything that we should have known about what their tournament was going to be. Yeah. We knew that Macau did not look very good. We knew that Jockster looked just as bad, if not worse. We knew that, Talkers was not going to be a hard carry. It was going to fall on Yang, and Yang's Gnar was never going to see the light of day again. So they needed to come up with something else, anything else. And they had a week, and they didn't. And, I've said this 1,000 times, and I think you've pointed it out as well. When you're an underdog, you have to play like it. You have to understand that you are not going to win a straight-up battle, and you have to make adjustments accordingly. And when you don't do that, when you put yourself in a situation where your only hope to get out of a group is to just play them head on and try to play on their level. I think the Revolta game on Skarner was really the sign that I knew this team isn't winning another game. They just didn't have the confidence in themselves to do something different.
Yeah.
And it's important, and the worst part is for Brazilian fans is that they beat EDG and then a week later, Albus Nox Luna beats the Rocks Tigers, and no one cares about the INTZ EDG upset anymore. It's going to go down in the record books as the second most interesting upset of this tournament at best. And that's, sorry, that's the way it goes. They had chances. They put themselves in positions where they could have been successful, and they didn't do it. And you can blame it on bad drafting. You can blame it on, Yang being outside of his champion pool comfort zone. I don't care. I saw Maokai played over the course of this week. I saw Nautilus played over the course of this week. I'm not saying it was a good idea. I'm just saying that it happened.
I'll actually save this statement for when we get to that, because it's a banger.
I mean, it was something. I absolutely could say without a doubt that it was a thing that happened. That is all I could say.
Yep.
And I think that's all we could really say about INTZ. I think we need to move on. Group A, a 1-5 team. Biggest disappointment of the tournament, G2 Esports. Walter, did Perks' apology make you feel any better about the fact that this powerhouse just completely no-showed this tournament?
Perks had an apology?
Yeah, he went out and told the fans, and I believe the words he used were, "We went into this tournament with the wrong mentality. I'm really sorry about what happened.
Yeah,
we're going to keep the roster together, and we're going to come back stronger next split." Which, first of all, I'm not sure I agree with keeping the roster together.
Nope.
I think that there's clearly some
I think there's two people.
Missteps.
Two players on that roster that will probably get replaced. See ya, buddy. Sorry, you're just not the right fit. Enjoy your Korean Challenger League teams. You'll be fine over there. You're nothing special. Sorry, I don't want to be rude to you. You were okay. But yeah, no, peace. You're out, buddy. And then Perks. Perkovich. My good friend Perks. You need to improve immensely over this off-season if you want to maintain your spot on this roster. I think the one thing you really have going for you is that there is kind of a lack of some talent in Europe in the Challenger division. I can't think of anyone right off the top of my head that would instantly come in and could take your job. Maybe that's a potential. You look to Korea and you take a Korean mid laner and bring him in with Trick. Trick, I think, is fine. I think this was a bad tournament for him. I think this was a really bad tournament for him. This is not Trick that we know The trick that we know of is the 2-time European MVP that was crushing and styling on junglers, and I think he just was really out of sorts.
And shot calling, which is the other thing we have to bring up with G2, is that they never made right calls until the one game that they won, and it was the only thing that gave them any sort of redeeming quality. And of course continues the villain narrative, because it was the one game none of us wanted them to win, which was against Albus Nox Luna. And this is the thing that I'm gonna defend Perks for a moment, and I know that sounds crazy. I was the one condemning him 2 weeks ago.
What?
This version of Perks doesn't work. But, and this is a big but, he is an immature dude. We've seen this on social media. He's young. He won Rookie of the Split in the spring.
Yep.
That's literally half a year ago. The guy is provably talented on the right kind of champion. That Rise game was a good game. I know that people's, my Rise is bad, my Azir is worse. His Rise was never as bad as people made it out to be. He had one bad Rise game, and people figured out that it fit in the cadence of their meme, and the meme is worth well more than actually an analysis of what was going on. And, look, he had a bad tournament. He's had 2 bad tournaments now. I think the guy won Rookie of the Split. He, was arguably the MVP of that first final series. G2 never really got tested again in Europe. They cruised their way to a first place finish. So it's like, oh, all those people who gave us crap about MSI, clearly we know what we're doing. And then they didn't. And you see the difference between them and a team like H2K, where H2K said, yeah, we had a bad week. We're going to bounce back. We're going to recover. We're going to do some different things. G2 looked absolutely done until they played Albus Nox Luna and then decided to show up for one game because...
And that I don't think was really G2. I don't think that was anything incredible G2 did. I think that a lot of it is also on Albus Nox, was trying out some things. It was trying to play a bit more standard, which, guys, wildcard teams, cheese it up, boys. Get that Gouda, get that Blue, get that Gorgonzola. There's an accoutrement of cheeses that you can bring to the party, so to speak. So go deep into your charcuterie, go to your cheesemonger, and get that 100-year-old cheddar out. I have a nice plate and knife set that I can give you guys. But G2, you aren't a wildcard team. You aren't allowed to just cheese people to death. And Perks, the problem is this was a roaming mid-meta, which fits into his style. He is very much a roamer. Granted, it's more on assassins than it is like a Ryze or a Cassiopeia, but it's still roaming. It's still getting out of your lane. It's still pushing up and roaming out of your lane, and they just failed at it. He just did terrible with it because at no point was he ever able to control his lane opponent. Was he ever able to truly push up his lane and was able to exert his influence? And some of that was just trick. Never had any influence on the map either, so that meant you couldn't get wards into the enemy jungle, you couldn't get wards on the side, you couldn't give Perks the comfort to fully push up his wave and get out. But at the end of the day, Expect I think is gone. Maybe for a certain player on this team who's a top laner but isn't actually a player at this moment, could we see the return of Joey Youngbuck
don't you dare.
to the top lane? His shot calling prowess. Kennen, dude. Kennen was he's a big
You have a shot caller. Don't you dare. Don't you dare.
I just had to say it to tilt you.
I know, and you did. Congratulations. At least you didn't say 0-0. That would have really been the one that would have thrown me off.
We gave up on 0-0 ages ago. If that kid was going to play League of Legends, he'd be back by now. He's done. He's toasted.
I think 0-0 gave up on 0-0 a while ago as well. And I mean before he actually stopped playing the game. We're gonna move on. I don't know. I mean, it's just disappointing, and I think that Perks might recover, but it depends on how he responds to this. He's got nothing but hate from the internet for a while now, and people respond to that in one of two ways. Either they say, "I'm gonna prove everyone wrong and show them what I'm capable of," or they become head cases and we never hear from them again. And we're about to find out which version of that he is.
Very true. Very true.
And that'll be interesting. Our last 1-in-5 team from Group D, Splyce. They proved me wrong. They won a game. I got to give them that. They did, in fact, win a game.
They did.
And that game gave TSM hope for about 3 hours and then ended up not really mattering. Did you see, I mean, what were the improvements that you would point to when you look at what they did this week versus what they did last week? Because as much as I'm sure Splyce hates to admit it, this really was about, growing as a team and being ready to come back better next split. So what was the growth? What are we already seeing from this team?
They were more confident. I think that's just what it comes down to, is they were really much more confident. Trashy in particular. They got Senkux onto a mid laner, which he can really affect the map. The Malzahar is definitely in his champion pool. Perks. Maybe you should have played Malzahar. That seems like your kind of champion, where it's kind of safe. You can push up the lane really quick. Either way, got him onto a good champion. Kabe and Mickey weren't really challenged much in that game by Uzi and Mata, which was sort of weird. To be fair, Kabe and Mickey definitely took a step back and were like, okay, we're gonna play about as safe as you possibly can without going full Sky Williams play, like a, if you've seen that video, you know what word I'm blatantly ignoring. Like a word
we're not allowed to use on a sponsored podcast.
So they basically did that, and then Wonder. There were 3 or 4 times where he should have died. Just straight up should have died and allowed Looper to get going, and he didn't. And Looper didn't get going, and he got going, and he was able to actually influence the map. So I think this was a success for Splyce. I don't think anyone had the expectation of... I don't even think Splyce had the expectation of anything more than maybe we contest for the 2nd seed if we get lucky.
Yeah, I mean, Cyronos pointed out in the chat, and I just responded to that, but he's absolutely correct in saying there were a lot of we're just happy to be here.
Yeah.
We're ready to learn from this experience. They knew. I mean, especially into the group that they were drawn into. We didn't know that Royal Never Give Up was going to have as bad of a week 2 as they did. We didn't know that TSM was going to have as bad of a week 2 as we did, and we're going to get to that later on in the show. I mean, this is something where they got to win. And they proved that they could do it on the big stage. They got to have, the one post-game interview. I thought that Senkux as a whole looked a lot better week 2 than he did week 1. I felt a lot better about...
It's incredible. You don't play a champion you're bad at, and you look better. It's incredible.
What are the odds? It is amazing what happens when you don't pick yourself into a matchup that you know you're bad at. I know, it's shocking, but here we are. I think that next year, Splyce could certainly grow. I think that there are things you're going to have to point to as either players are going to have to improve quickly or you'll have to look at potential replacements.
Yeah.
Very few times do we go through an offseason where teams retain all 5 players, either because they'll be outbid or because of players just wanting to try something new. G2 Perks, I got to be honest, as much as I like Perks, he might be a perfect candidate for a change of scenery guy.
Yeah.
He might be someone who just is going to do a lot better with a stricter coach, maybe like a Daylor type, if Daylor has any interest in coming back at all, which it doesn't seem like he does.
I have some thoughts about Daylor later. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Don't worry
I
about
mean,
it.
there are coaches like that, though, coaches that can beat someone like that into shape. And I think Yamato Cannon is the perfect kind of coach for this team. I think that certainly there are players of this team, in a different meta, Trashy has looked very good. He'll have to expand his champion pool if they want to trust him in the long run. Wonder was a very good top laner throughout the regular season. This was not the champion pool for him as well, and he has to work on expanding. They were very bad one split and very good the next, and when enough of that can be put towards meta changes, it makes you wonder how resilient this team is and whether or not they're going to be ready to do this for a whole another year. But you have time for that. This is the good news for Splyce, is that you have time to sort this out. You sit down with Yamato Cannon, you sit down with, the big bosses over in NA, and you talk about, which players you believe have the potential to keep growing and which ones tap out. And if you're Splyce, maybe you have to even look at, which players are worth, like a sign-in trade almost, where they, get at least a little bit back for them. Mickey, it might be a good example of that, where there will be some teams that are looking for supports that, he won Rookie of the Split, but you could maybe part ways with him depending on the offer that you get. I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see how they handle the offseason. And let's not forget, guys, there are tons of sports teams that are now getting involved. We've seen 2 big groups get into North America. If you think that Europe is going to go through this whole offseason period without any, Bundesliga or Spanish league or even Premier League, like teams are starting to get really interested. And if the changes are made this offseason that we think are going to happen, bidding wars are going to start.
Yep.
And when bidding wars start, talent moves around, and we'll see what happens to Splyce. We'll see what this team ends up being. But I think that these guys all grew enough that you can point to particular moments at Worlds where, that's your upside if you were, say, their agent in a world in which these guys had agents that actually cared about them.
I was going to say,
than,
agent doesn't really exist in League of Legends.
Well, if agents don't exist, then how did Veritas get signed? That's my counterpoint. Someone is there upselling certain talents, and maybe it's only Koreans who do it.
Touché.
But,
Touché.
we'll see what happens. Speaking of teams that are going to have a lot of upselling to do this offseason, Group B, they went 2-4. They technically are not the last place team of the group, but I'm thematically putting the last place team of that group together with the next team we're going to talk about after. So let's talk about IMEI. I may have some strong feelings about this team's performance this week. Walter, you didn't have a dog in the game when it came to Group B. You just wanted to see SKT look like SKT and everything else, the chips could fall where they may.
Yeah.
But, I mean, when you look at IMEI, were you happy to see some of the weirdness that came out of their pick and ban? Were you
happy?
I mean, like how did it make you feel? Like, I mean, like as an analyst, it drove me
happy.
Both up the wall and made me incredibly curious, because these were clearly, no one would have predicted our jungler plays support while our mid laner plays jungle. I don't think anyone was expecting that. Like, I figured they would just get a mage support that kind of played like a mid laner, like, worst case scenario, like an Annie or something. At least you have hard engage and he knows how to do it. Like, well, clearly, I don't understand that Koreans just play Lee Sin and they can just all go in and do it.
I learned that. So I learned that from Obscurica and Edelweiss, Barry. And basically they said, Koreans, they do whatever their preferred position is. And they all do jungler as their secondary. And if they get the jungle, they just play Lee Sin, because that way then they can just work on their mechanics. So yeah, it was kind of interesting. And then when they did that, I went to the bathroom and came back, and they're all talking about it in Discord. And I'm like, what do you mean? And I look at it, I'm like, is that support Lee Sin? Oh wait, no, it's Alistar and their jungler. Oh, okay, I see what they're saying. Because I think I came in right as the broadcast was talking about, like, oh, he just switched to exhaust in time. Like, oh, he barely changed his summoner spell. They were like, are they doing double jungle? What are they do? What is this craziness? It's IMEI. It could be literally anything.
For the record, double jungle would have been pretty sweet.
Double jungle would have been amazing.
Any sense,
it would have killed Kelsey Moser. She would have actually died in the press room at the venue. It would have been hilarious. Emily Rand, during this entire group, was keeping us informed of how Kelsey was reacting to IMEI during the entire stretch. It was great. It was entertaining.
It was wonderful. I just loved it when during that Cloud9 game she said, "No, this isn't happening. No,
they can't win.
Not allowed.
No,
they're not.
This
They
doesn't
can't win.
happen.
Stop it. Stop it.
But
right
that's
now.
every IMEI win over the past 3 months has been just like, they are the epitome of, we aren't as good as this team. We're dragging them into the mud with us. The awkward top lane champion picks were just Amazing J being Amazing J. They were entertaining. I would say they were amazing. From a spectator fan, like, as an analyst, this was a horrible team to watch, because you're like, they're doing this wrong. Someone on Twitter was like, I must not judge Athena's jungle pathing. I must not judge Athena's jungle pathing. I must not. Why are you starting at blue buff? Like, Lee Sin, what are you doing? Like,
that was one of my favorite.
It was great. It was. They were great to watch from an entertainment standpoint. They were the Santino Marella of the tournament. For those of you who don't know WWE, Santino Marella was a Italian caricature of a man that was a jobber. His job was to lose to everyone. He was a heel. He was a baby face. He was a heel again. Like, that was his job, is go, when you want to make a guy look good, you send in Santino Marella. He did a stupid trumpet thing with his hand, strut around. His finisher was he took a snake sock puppet out and he bit you, and that was his finishing move. just a hilarious character. And then like in the last couple of years that he was with WWE, they're like, all right, like we need to give you like your due. And he held like the United States Championship and the Intercontinental Championship each in like his last 3 years in the company. It was like hilarious. That's Aime. They're the jobber that's supposed to lose to everyone. And then they just like said, well, you lost to a bunch of people. You went to the LSPL. Let's give you your credit now. And then they made it to Worlds. They won a couple games. We got some entertainment value out of them. And we got an excellent, excellent song written by Edelweiss Barry to Obscurica. Because Amazing J just was amazing against Flash Wolves. And he had to write a song.
I will say this. As a Flash Wolves fan, I was less amused by just how poorly that went. But I don't blame Aime, right? Both of those wins that Aime got were against Flash Wolves. They earned those wins against Flash Wolves, mostly because Flash Wolves earned losing. Like that was like Flash Wolves deserved to lose each and every one of those games. And honestly, when it comes down to me and Aime, like I did love just the confusion that enemy teams had when they played them throughout this group. Like there was a moment where Amazing J gets a hook with his Nautilus that kills Faker underneath the inner mid tower. Like the game was so clearly in SKT's favor, but it was one of those things where you could tell, like, God, I haven't played a Nautilus in so long. Like, what does he do again? What's the range on that hook? Oh crap, I'm dead. Like, and it was the same thing I felt with Cloud9 and Aime, and I felt like one of the reasons it went so long. I'm like, Cloud9, I know it's been a few months, but you should know what Maokai's ult does. Like, you should be aware of the damage reduction.
I've been playing Maokai since Season 2, and I still don't know what Maokai's ultimate does. Like, I just know it's a circle, you absorb some damage, and then you blow it up, and you kill steal their 80 carry with 100 health as your Caitlyn ults him. Like,
yeah. I think every North America fan was terrified. Not just because it would mean that there would be no team out of the group stage for them, but also because they'd then have to say, how did you get eliminated? Well, Maokai showed up. And suddenly here we are, which I don't think was something.
There's no trees in San Francisco. What are you talking about?
I don't think they were ready for that. But yeah, this is that's Aime for you. It's time to move on. As much as I don't want to.
Oh, you have to. You have to. Oh boy. Let's hear this one. I can't wait to hear all this LMS apologists. Let's go. It's tasty. It's tasty karma.
It's
Give it.
First of all,
bring it on.
let's put this in two different conversations. The first conversation is, were Taiwan bad at this tournament? And the answer I would say is, in their wins, they weren't. Their wins were very high quality wins. When Flash Wolves looked good, and I'm gonna lump AHQ in here, by the way, for those of you who are curious. I'm gonna basically talk about both of these teams around the same time because they're both incredibly similar in my opinion. When these teams looked good, they looked really good. The Flash Wolf win against SKT was one of the cleanest wins we saw in the whole tournament. When the Flash Wolves beat up on Cloud9, Cloud9 didn't stand a chance. AHQ's first win against H2K was a dominant win. They played very well in their games against INTZ. They never gave INTZ the lead. They never really gave them much of an opportunity. But both of these teams, and this is what infuriates me, this is what, as a Taiwanese fan, just blew my mind. And in Flash Wolves, it's a very easy question to ask. Do you understand what the late game is? I genuinely want to know. Like, are you aware that there is a point in the game in which you're supposed to take objectives and then turn them into other objectives so that the enemy's base is down and you can do things inside of it? Like, are you aware that this is a thing? Because your games against Aime tell me that you are not aware that that is how this works. Their target selection was terrible. The fight selection in their is just when they wanted to engage and how they would engage was pathetic. MMD in most of these games, whenever he was getting ganked, I guarantee you, whatever direction he should have gone in, whether he should have flashed or not, everything he did under any amount of pressure was wrong. 100% of the time. And it's one of those things like people will talk about, expect like, oh my God, what a bad, top laner. Oh, Mouse, he's the worst top laner to get out of the group stage. And you know what? They were bad. Not defending those players. But MMD was just as bad as any top laner you could name. And it was one of those things where he just did it in, sneaky bad fashions. Like it would just be that he was constantly behind in lane in a tournament where they needed him to be smarter than that. And Karza, for every mechanical skill he possessed, he never did enough pressure in the early game to snowball some of these games before they would have even had to get to the late game. And as soon as the late game rolled around, he had no idea what the hell he was doing. Yeah, he would initiate on fights without any of his team there for backup. What in the world was the plan?
So this is my point on Flash Wolves. And this is, since you lumped them both together, I want to make one point about HQ, I want to make one point of Flash Wolves, and since you're on Flash Wolves right now, let's talk about Flash Wolves.
Let's talk about Flash Wolves.
Karza.
Yeah.
You have been, last year you were one of the best junglers in the world. You were argued that you should be imported to a Chinese team, to a Korean. You could be imported to a Korean team. North America should import you. You were wasting away in Taiwan. And kind of the same thing with Maple, but whatever. You had you didn't leave for whatever reason. Maybe you weren't offered. Maybe you just have an allegiance to Flash Wolves in Taiwan. Whatever. When you get out jungled by a Lee Sin player that starts blue buff, that takes the blue buff, that then tries to invade you, and fails on his invade to the point where you should be like, I know his red's up. Let me go just take his red. He's chunked out. You got out pressured. You got out jungled. You got out early gamed. You got out late gamed by a goddamn mid laner whose claim to fame is that he is a second coming of Pawn general type player that plays Varus. The second that happened, I'm off. I'm off the train. I don't know why you kept beating Korean teams. I don't understand. But the Karza that showed up to this tournament, the champion pool is the exact same for junglers that it was last year, and you just completely yourself. I don't know what happened.
He outplayed Blank, and in the game that they beat Cloud9, it wasn't particularly close. Even in the game they lost to Cloud9, it wasn't particularly close. And I'm not saying Meteos is a great jungler, but he had some great performances.
I'm not saying
the problem is no one in this team had good performances at the same time. Within their 2 wins, everyone was on point. Maple would have a great game. Karza was there for the follow-up. Sword Art would have, usually it was on strong initiating champions, whether it be a Tom Kench or an Alistar. That's where he did his best. That's when I felt the best about the Flash Wolves. And at the end of the day, they couldn't get it together often enough to make it work. And the losses are bad losses. The 2 games they lost last week, we already went into week 1. Those were terrible losses. Yeah. The loss against Aimee is pathetic. There is no other word than pathetic. As someone pointed out, they gave Aimee so much credit. It was like they spent the entire game going, we don't want to blow the game. We don't want to blow the game. We don't want to blow the game. We don't want to wait a second. When was our power spike again? Oh, it was 10 minutes ago? Crap. And then they lost. And it was embarrassing. I mean, how do you do that? How do you not have a leader on the team with the number of veteran players that you have? How do you not understand what a power spike is and how to play with it in order to give yourself the best chance to succeed? I don't get how they were so brain dead. Because it wasn't individual talent that lost here. Karza is still a very mechanically talented jungler. Maple is still a very mechanically talented mid laner. Sword Art played very, very well, even in their losses. NL did better than most of us expected. But when push came to shove, they were wimps. They made terrible shot calls. They gave up way too much even when they were ahead. They were afraid to dive. They were afraid to make plays. They were so afraid of what would happen if they made a decision and lost that they ended up playing not to lose. And when you play not to lose, guess what happens? You don't achieve your win condition, and you end up 2-4, and you end up with me having to sit on this podcast and be mad at you because I know you are better than the Cloud9 team that got out of this tournament. You didn't play like it this tournament. You threw away games. Those Aimee games are both pathetic. You won one of them, you would have gotten a tiebreaker, and after you beat Cloud9 in the group stage week 2, I believe you would have done it again. But you lost that chance because you screwed yourselves over, and you have no one else to blame. Because you made terrible calls. You played like you had no guts, and
Good.
instead your guts spilled all over the floor. I have no problem being angry at that team. That team does not deserve defense. They had their defense. They refused to defend themselves because they were so. And the thing is, I know they can do it. You know how I know they can do it? They did it twice. They did it all throughout Taiwan. They did it at MSI. This team they lost their minds. They lost their minds. And you know what? Now I've lost my mind. And when you make Obscurica drink, like Obscurica made a whole thing. He doesn't drink. He gets a hangover from 3 whole beers.
Yep.
And you made him drink because your performance was so devastatingly bad that even someone who wrote an entire article about how you were going to let him down was let down. That's how bad you were, Flash Wolves.
So
get your stuff together.
Obviously, Flash Wolves fell apart. They were the team out of Taiwan that I expected the most out of. What about
I
AHQ?
expected the most out of AHQ.
Well, what
which
about
is
AHQ?
Why...
So let's shift AHQ. What did AHQ do that also deserves your ire?
Oh my God! What didn't they do that deserves my ire? I mean, let's break down all of these games, right? I mean, AHQ, they beat INTZ twice. Congratulations. They beat EDG week 1. Or week 2, I should say. It was a great victory. Wait, no, they didn't beat EDG either. I'm sorry. They beat H2K week 1.
Yeah,
great victory. Closed it out. They have the perfect strategy to beat EDG. All you have to do is attack Mouse. You want to know why? Because Clear Love never ganks for Mouse. It's a very clear strategy. All you have to do is gank top. Just gank top. Just gank top. First week, they just didn't do it for whatever reason. Second week, it is a do or die game. If they win, they go on. And they are given the Exodia composition, as the memers so well put it. They got every single champion that they wanted. They got Gnar, Elise, Twisted Fate, Jinx, Tahm Kench. If you were coming up with a dream composition for AHQ, that's the one, as long as Westor is in the lineup, that you would use. And that's the Westor caveat that I'm going to close with here. But just for now, let's pretend that Westor is your only mid lane option. That's the dream. You were ahead 8,000 gold.
Yep.
Your fights from that point forward were atrocious. You picked a Baron that was at best a 50-50, and you let Clear Love out-jungle you. And I don't know why you would go for a 50-50 Baron, because everyone agrees that Mountain is the weakest player on your team, so you put the 50-50 chances in his hands against one of the best junglers in the world. What the hell were you thinking? How is that possibly the right play? That is the one thing that could kill you. And even then, you could have just run away. You could have accepted that you lost the fight. You know what? One Baron's not going to make that big of a difference. You're still ahead 6-7K at this point, and you tried to fight after you'd already clearly been injured by the Baron. The resistances were down. You had nothing going for you. And even after half of your team turned, to run, the other half stuck around. And I don't get it. If Westor sacrifices himself, everyone else gets out of the fight. One person is dead. EDG doesn't get half of the objectives they do, and you're still okay. But the worst part of that loss, and that's the only loss that matters. Say what you will about the H2K win over them earlier in the day. I think that those teams are pretty evenly matched. That, if there had been a tiebreaker for the 1 seed, it would have been a very fun tiebreaker to watch. I think they're about the same level. But EDG, they had this game. And when the 2 fights that came after that Baron happened, On did less damage than everyone on his team except for his support, as a 6-item Jinx, who even had the gall to build Guardian Angel, despite the fact that with Tahm Kench and Gnar and Elise, you basically have a Protect the Jinx composition. He had no faith in himself. He was nowhere to be found during team fights, which means either A, they were initiating bad team fights, which was also true, but B, where the hell were you? Where was it more important to be? Were you late for like a coffee lunch with a friend of yours? Like, what the hell were you doing? You are the one thing that can win these fights, and when you were there, you were tearing through EDG, and then the last 15 minutes of the game, you just decide not to show up. He had a quote at the end of that game. He said that we lost because of poor execution, to which I had so many expletives I wanted to throw out that I cannot say on this podcast in response to that. No duh. It was execution. You know who should be executed? You. Your jinx
Whoa,
should be executed.
whoa,
Not him as a person, but
whoa,
his jinx
whoa,
should be
okay.
executed on that rift. At the end of the game, we should have had an entire ceremony saying On is not allowed to be considered a star player anymore. I'm done. I'm done. You play that way in a game that you needed to win. Coward. You absolute coward. I'm done. I'm done with him. I'm done with him. AHQ is gonna go for a full rebuild. Flash Wolves are gonna go for at least a partial rebuild. These are things that I've heard some rumors about. I think it's gonna keep happening for a while now. This is something that's been a while coming, right? These teams didn't succeed. They're the best 2 teams in Taiwan. They can bid for just about anybody. But this is where I bring up, and this is where I'm gonna get disappointed, and talk to you guys about something that just makes me genuinely sad on the inside. I wrote an article, May 13th, 2016. Flash Wolves run shows LMS deserves attention. This can be found on slingshotesports.com, in which I point out, with the help of Obscurica, all of the huge organizational, fundamental issues that are plaguing Taiwan right now. The lack of money, the lack of infrastructure outside of the top 3 teams, the inability to really develop talent because of those 2 problems being so existent. And by the way, if you're counting on Riot to help out, you know how many people are at Riot's esports department in Taiwan? 1. There is 1 person from Riot Games in Taiwan's esports department. Everything else is run by Garena, who has so many other games that they need to balance and so many other things to tackle that there's no way they could spend more money trying to fix this. Riot has to fix this. Riot has to make Western fans give a crap by actually having an English stream so that people get to know and enjoy these people. Because some of the stories, if you follow Taiwan, some of these players are some of the most likable players you're ever going to meet. Maple is one of my favorite people to hear interviewed. He is such a genuine, kind-hearted person. I love Sword Art. I love Albus. I love Westor as a person. These are all things where there are so many great stories to be told, and most people are never going to hear them because there is no English cast, because until MSI and Worlds, we pretend like Taiwan doesn't exist, and no one in Riot is willing to acknowledge that there is a power region that is in desperate need of their help, the same way that Korea got help, the same way that China got help, and they are letting it die. And they're going to continue to let it die until the LMS is no longer a power region, and it's going to be me, Obscurica, and Gumiho throwing the funeral, and everyone else is just going to be like, oh, well, it's Taiwan. And that is going to be the saddest part of all. And by the way, AHQ, just one last thing.
It's your floor.
You started Westor 5 of 6 games in this tournament. Chawi is a player that anyone who follows Taiwan can tell you for a fact was a better mid laner for this meta. You had to ban Syndra on blue side every game because Westor couldn't play it. You know who's a great Syndra player? Chawi. You know who's a great Victor player? Chawi. You know who's great at basically every meta champion that you're going to throw out there right now? Chawi. Why wasn't he played? Westor, I guess, because you have this allegiance to him and you keep letting him retire and pull this Brett Favre move every year and then come back because you love him and the fans love him and it's the only thing that brings you any sort of streaming money because once again Riot abandoned your region, so you feel this need to attach yourself to him and keep him going. It hurts my brain. It hurts. My face, I can feel my face getting red and just permeating this heat. You go ahead and say some things.
At the risk of angering you further, which I don't think is even possible.
The
question I keep posing to Chase, whether it's on camera, whether it's off camera, I even told him before I was going to say this. Why should I care about the LMS? And he's made great points. There's very little infrastructure there. There's no English cast. It's quite obvious why currently I don't care about it. Why I probably don't need to care about it. He makes points about why I should. The players, all that kind of stuff. That it's great League of Legends. But inside of that, and some of it may need to be things that Riot needs to fix. No, I personally don't like trying to watch VODs where I can't understand what's going on because part of the process of it is listening and hearing because you can't catch everything visually. It's impossible to catch everything in any kind of sport visually. It's just absolutely impossible. So you need to have that audio kind of cue telling you what's going on as you're watching the screen. Maybe the stories are interesting, but it happens at the same time that Korea and China does. The quality of play is not as good as at least Korea, and I would still put China for the most part above it. It does not have anything compelling to it, to me personally, beyond the top 2 teams, and I guess now I have to include J-Team in that because they were so good for the entire season. But when I make jokes about Machi and about this being a wild card region, it's because the bottom of it is garbage. It is terrible. It is awful to watch. I don't want to pay attention to it. I'll watch the one AHQ versus Flash Wolves series that's good. I'll pay attention a little bit to the playoffs so I knew who's going. But I don't see anything that Taiwan or Riot could do without a massive, massive overhaul of the region and their priorities to make me care about the LMS. And I think that is a fundamental problem. And I think when Riot looks at it, they look and they see people like me, and they can't answer that question. They can't answer to me the question why I should care about the LMS. And the investment that they would have to make just wouldn't be worth it to them. So I'm not defending it. I'm not trying to say they're in the right to not do it. I'm not in the boat that says the LMS needs to die as a region, because they are one of 3 regions, 2 if you don't want to count Season 1, that have won a world championship. And it was a storied
but what
team
you're proposing
and region.
will kill the region. That's the problem. The region cannot prop itself up on its own. Garena has too many eggs and too many baskets. They cannot do it. And here's the question that really needs to be asked. When it comes to International League of Legends, what matters most? And if your answer is, I want to see the best teams perform on a regular basis, then the answer is, awesome, fix Taiwan. Because Taiwan is a region with tons of really talented players. There is a reason that Taiwan dominated the GPL back when they were in a region with Southeast Asia, and we called that a power region. Mm-hmm. Because Taiwan has a incredibly large, passionate player base. Taiwan as a country, or whatever you want to call it. I understand it politically gets complicated, but Taiwan as a region loves League of Legends. They put so much of themselves, so much of their fan base, so much of everything else into this game. And yet they are going to stagnate and die without any help because the money isn't there, and there aren't going to be that many Jay Chows willing to come in and buy a team like the Taipei Assassins and fix things that way. Or at the very least, it's going to be slow enough that it'll be a slow, painful death. And if you don't believe me, look at the GPL. Look at what happened to the Saigon teams. Remember when the Saigon Jokers were a fun team you looked forward to at Worlds every year? I do too. You're never going to see it again.
Singapore Sentinels.
The GPL is a laughingstock now, because without Taiwan, the entire region has been abandoned. There's no money, there's no infrastructure, and it just died. And you know what? If you're one of those people who says, but how does that affect me? Why should I care? I mean, whatever. I guess,
I'm sorry.
It's hard for me to imagine how you could look at a region that is capable of so much and say, nah, I'd rather they undersell their potential for the rest of League of Legends life. I'd rather never see any of the best quality teams, like the 2 teams we saw meet the quarterfinals last year, like the team that won the Season 2 World Championships. I would rather never see anything like that again and see Taiwan eventually become a wild card region just like the rest, and we'll all pretend that they just never had an opportunity when there were so many times we could have fixed it and we didn't. And to me, saying, well, it doesn't matter to me, guess what? There are a lot of things that don't matter to me, but are still good things to do. I don't care about the school district in Massachusetts because I don't live there, but I'm still glad when it does well because I'm a human being and I care about everyone doing better when they have the ability to reach a certain level of potential. They can do it. It's just not. That's how this works. It's called empathy. It's called understanding that there are people who do care about Taiwan, and that Taiwanese player and fan base has put up with so much crap. They've had to put up with all the Garena homophobia and whatever else. We all remember that, right? When they had this whole thing about a limit of 1 transgender person and they're all female team because apparently transgender people have superpowers. Like, do we remember all of the crap that fan base has gone through and how Garena's run things and the ping issues and all of the other terrible stuff that Garena does on a day-to-day basis? And I know they're trying their best. This isn't a bash Garena podcast, but Riot needs to make a choice. Either you abandon Taiwan, you abandon the passionate fan base that has done so much to keep that region alive when you have failed them for years now, or you let it die and you live with that. And it might not matter to a lot of the West, but it matters to me. And I really do not want to see yet another international wildcard region. It's it's one of those things where Riot's making good decisions on some of the other marks. Rasta Duppy, put a comment here where, Riot is starting to help the esports scene. So maybe in 3 years they will try to help the LMS. The LMS won't exist in 3 years at this rate. It doesn't have 3 years. It doesn't have 2 years at the most. And I know I sound alarmist, but it's because I'm alarmed. So take that as you will. It makes me sad. I'm angry at the teams. The teams could have played better. The teams had all the potential in the world to make it out of both of their groups. They both failed. They both deserve every ounce of criticism they get. The Taiwanese fans will give them a whole bunch of lip when they get back. But the region itself, if you care about good League of Legends, you don't want Taiwan becoming another bad wildcard region like the GPL is. That's not what's best or healthiest for the game. It's just not. It's just not.
Gotta have a little faith, bro. Gotta have a little faith. Gotta have a little bit of faith. Just a little bit.
We'll segue to the faith age then. I mean, there's nothing else to say. I mean, I know that there are going to be people who agree with me, who believe that the LMS deserves help. I'll put it this way. I wrote that article in May. You know what's changed since I wrote it? Nothing. You know how many articles Obscurka's run about it? How much has changed? Nothing. Gumiho? Nothing. There are plenty of people who are trying to make this matter, and it's not. So anyway, Logic Gaming. We have to move on. I could rant for 3 hours about the LMS.
I know you could.
And my feelings about it. But you know what?
I know you could.
We get to flip it on the other side. North America. The region that last week was talking about having all 3 teams go through, that gave Europe so much crap.
Yep.
And it starts with CLG in Group A. I mean, other than the wild card buff that happens every time a wild card team plays CLG, what happened? How did we get here?
Hui's trash. You can't have a mid laner that only knows how to play 2 champions. That's it. Darshan actually elevated his play, I think, during week 1 and during week 2. He is not back to spring Darshan or MSI Darshan, but he definitely elevated his play. It was good to see that.
Poppy helped.
X-Smithy is a fantastic jungler. He just gets better and better. Every time I watch him play, he just gets a little bit better. And that's fantastic. Stixay and Aframu are the same. Stixay, again, is someone that's making just really small incremental improvements, and that's fine. They don't need him to explode and become the best AD carry in North America. And that's when I go back to my statement. CLG, they're going to kind of hover around this, third, 4-2 best team in North America, get to Worlds. If they get the right group, maybe they can get out of it. If not, unless they get some massive improvement from Stixay. But I think at the end of the day, Hui's done. I can't see him being on this roster anymore. They need to replace him. They need to get someone that has a larger champion pool.
Which is funny to say of Hui, because the old knock on him was he plays so many champions, just none of them very well. And now you look at it and you say, well, now he's just not versatile enough.
He still plays a bunch of champions. When I'm referring to champion pool here, I'm not referring to the ability to play champions. I have the ability to play all 130 some odd champions of the game. But I don't play Zed because I'm bad at Zed. I don't play Kha'Zix because the Kha'Zix isn't very good right now. When you are only good at 2 champions in a meta, when you're only good at 2 champions, kind of period, and it takes you 6-7 weeks to get good at a different 2 champions to adapt to a different meta, that's a problem. So, yeah, I can't see him staying on this team. He seems like an incredibly nice person. He seems like he gets along with the team. Maybe you keep him around as a sub. Maybe you do some sort of 2...
He could be an analyst. He could be a positional coach.
Maybe you go to...
He could be a cheerleader. I don't care.
You do 2 mid laners. I don't know, but I think that if CLG ever wants to truly be successful as an organization, as a team in North America, as a team on the world stage, they cannot do it with Hui. I hold that true to my heart. He is a wonderful person. It is a shame to not be able to see him anymore, but fundamentally, if this team wants to improve and wants to be contender in North America and on the world stage, they have to replace Hui. That's just what it comes down to.
And the other thing, and none of the CLG fans want to talk about it, or at least the ones that do. It's in very hushed breaths way down in the Reddit comment section. Aphromoo played like crap this tournament. Aphromoo had a terrible tournament. He missed so many of his ults. He wasn't the initiator that we talked about heading into this tournament that he needed to be. He was their primary engage for the last 2 splits. He was the guy who was shot calling and making all of these decisions, and he looked bad. He was abused in lane. He would be caught out on roams where he would never do that before. He just choked. I mean, I don't like to use the word choked, but at the end of the day, like, I don't know how else to describe it. There was this idea before Season 5 that Aphromoo couldn't play well in big game situations. And whether you put that on Aphromoo, whether you put that on Double Lift, whether you put that on, whatever you put it on. Last year's Worlds, Aphromoo didn't look great. But then, they had these championships in North America. They had these big wins against big rivals. But it's a problem when, at the end of the day, push comes to shove. He did not show up for this team. And while Darshan played okay, he wasn't so amazing to make up for what was coming down from Aphromu's deficiencies. Because when you're losing the vision war, when you're losing the ability to engage, you're putting all of it onto your jungler and your top laner, and your top laner is good but not great, then suddenly a guy like Hui, who does have positional errors, are exposed. And, I see some people in chat, Cyrenos just talked about, maybe Hui could stay, but you've really got to make up for some of those deficiencies. I don't know if Darshan bounces back from the split he just had. He's been playing League since Season 2. How many people are still playing from Season 2 in North America? I'll give you a hint. Not a lot.
Might just be Darshan. Darshan and Xmithy?
Xmithy might have been around back in the day. Double Lift has been around. That's your short list.
I mean, yeah, it's a really short list.
Meteos has been playing, but he had to take a whole year off because he wasn't good enough.
Yeah,
and guess what? He's back to being not good enough as soon as his tournament is over. Spoiler alert for our later section. I just don't know if he bounces back. I don't know if he has that competitive edge to him. And after losing like this, when you're sitting at home because you lost to a Russian team that you didn't deem worthy of your scrim time.
Well, CLG wouldn't be scrimming them anyways. CLG shouldn't be scrimming them anyways because they're in the same group.
Well,
but
of course, but you could say the same about any of the teams that, there were a lot of fundamental issues with this team that exposed them in the North American LCS, and the only way they were going to overcome them on a world stage is if Aphromoo continued his level of play, Darshan improved, and Hui did enough.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, Darshan stepped up a little bit. Aphromoo took a huge step back, and Hui was who we thought he was. And that was not an intentional pun, but I'm kind of glad it happened anyway. I don't know. If I'm CLG, I think that you have to look at the drawing board and say, is Aphromoo going to be able to perform on a big stage? What is our goal as an organization?
He has. I disagree with he doesn't perform on a big stage.
Over the course of his career, he has had 2 postseasons where he has done well, and 2 Worlds tournaments, and about 5 postseasons where he has done poorly. I think that matters. I think that is relevant. If you look at the overall sample size, there's a reason that before they won the NA championship in Season 5, he was known as someone who could not perform on the big stage. Just because he had 2 good North American championships. So was Double Lift,
to be fair.
So was and guess what? We're about to talk about Double Lift choking on the big stage again because he looked terrible in Week 2 for TSM, and that's the team we have to get to next. So if we're, I trust me, I give that criticism both ways. That's not a one-sided critique here, good sir. And I'm gonna give you the floor on TSM because this is your team. This is the team that you love. The impression I've gotten, and some of this, you weren't able to watch live.
Yeah, no. I'll be honest. I made a decision. I could either go see Trevor Noah, or I could go watch these games live. And given the political climate, I picked Trevor Noah. And God, was it great, especially after what happened the day before. So I made the right choice here. And, yeah, I can't say that I was surprised. I can't say that I didn't see this coming. Ever since Kelsey Moser said, I think this team is better than EDG's, it's the third best team in the world, I just went, God, no, please don't do this. Please don't overhype this team. Don't do it. Because, one, they were not challenged in North America. None of the teams in North America were good enough. Let's be very honest. I know Cloud9 made it to quarterfinals. Whoop-de-frickin-do. None of the teams in North America were really good enough to provide decent practice against what you would expect on a world stage. There is not an 80 carry in North America that can challenge double lift the way that Uzi would challenge him. That just doesn't exist. That doesn't exist. There is no mid laner that can challenge Bjergsen the way that a mid laner like Crown can. I think Crown is an exceptional mid laner. I think he's fantastic. I think he is up there when you talk about mid laners in Korea. I think he's better than Kuro. Like, I don't think
Victor was so good.
That Victor was amazing. And that just comes down to some like pick and ban stuff that I just don't understand. I don't understand why you let Crown play his absolute best champion that he has shown time in and time out. It does not matter if you think you have a counter pick. It does not matter what you play into it. He's going to beat you in lane. He has beaten Faker with that champion in lane. Granted, SKT then beat them in the mid to late game in the team fighting phase and everything, but in lane, Crown has shown that he can go toe-to-toe with Faker on that champion. He can go toe-to-toe with Kuro. He can go toe-to-toe with anything that Korea had to throw at him on that champion. Teams banned the champion against him.
Yeah.
I didn't understand the Zillion pick, because as good as he is at Zillion, as good as Bjergsen is at champions,
he was not good at that in that game. We'll put it that way.
As a whole, as good as he is against on Lulu's, on Oriana's, on Zillions, that's not what you want him on. I get he's good at the support of mid lane champions. I get you have to, play around double lift some. You have to play around haunt Zers some. That's not his champion. Don't make him play those kind of supportive champions. I don't care how good he is at them. That wasn't what was working for you guys. It was when he was playing lane-dominant champions. It was when you were doing the exact same thing that you were doing in North America, was 3 lane-dominant champions, crush laning phase, get into teamfight phase with a lead. That's the second thing. By never being challenged in North America, they were never challenged to play from behind. They never had to learn how to win a game when they were behind. They never had to learn how to react when they didn't have a gold lead. We look at the scrim culture that people talk about, oh, we're doing great in our scrims, we're doing great in our scrims. You should be getting killed in your scrims when you play against Korean teams. You should be losing. You should not be beating them in a scrim. And if they don't take it serious, fine, that's their problem. But I should not be hearing, oh yeah, we're doing great in scrims. We're awesome in scrims. We're winning all of our scrims. That means you aren't learning. If you're winning all of your games in the regular season and you're winning all your scrims, you're not learning.
Yeah.
You're just regurgitating the same stuff and fine-tuning it and never having it challenged. Which is going to bring me to my third point. And if you are
hold on.
Well, I'll let you go before I go on this.
Because I know where this is going,
yes.
And it has to do with some scrim culture, and we both have some strong feelings about it. I do want to say, and DM Top Hat made a point about it, about how inconsistent they looked. Cargilicus in the chat also said, was it ego? I don't know. I would imagine it's a bit of both. I think double lift, absolutely. When you look at the overextensions that he makes, that always comes from ego. That's double lift. I made the joke last week. Double lift knows he's trash, but still thinks he's better than everyone else. He is the golden trash bag compared to everyone else's normal black ones. Like, that's just how he views the game. That's the confidence that he has. And for a lot of people, that's what you need to be a champion. You need to have the confidence that you are going to be able to come in and be dominant and be able to beat up on the enemy team. And that can work for you, or it could punish you in a huge way. You can say you cannot be baited by someone like Mata insulting your ego. You cannot be baited by teams saying like, oh yeah, double lift is, he's fine or he's okay or whatever. And it did feel like there was some mental stuff in there, but he's always been like that. So I don't know how much to attribute to that. Maybe all of that was white noise and he just did what he always does on the big stage and tries to be the hero, which, I'm going to give Forgiven a lot of credit later on in this podcast for not being that guy when he did need to be, because that was something that I was very afraid that he and double lift were both going to, fall to that same symptom. And the one I thought would fix it didn't. And the one that I didn't think would fix it did. So,
surprise.
Congratulations for that. But I mean, Hanser had some really bad games. Bjergsen had one of the worst Bjergsen games I've ever seen. You get solo killed in lane twice. I don't care what champion you are or what the matchup is. That's unacceptable. That's just flat out disrespect. You can't do it. It's just not okay. And I mentioned last week, or I should say on our Guest the Lions podcast before Group D, are you afraid that Sven Skjern could drop off? You said no. He did drop off a little bit. That was just a little, but it was just enough.
He was their best player. He was their best player that week. This past week.
In week 2, I would say
he was their best player in week 2. He was their best player in week 2. He was the most consistent. He was the best player.
That's your biggest problem, is because he took a very slight step back, and the rest of the team took big steps back. Bjergsen is supposed to be your hero player, and when he got Syndra, everything was great, and when he was, on just about anything else, he just wasn't there.
He let Aurelion Soul through, which has been proven to be an anti-Bjergsen champion, and
oh my God,
proven to be an anti-Faker champion. He's literally... Apto calls it a boosted character for a reason. When you played against Keen, you just banned his Urgot and his Hecarim because you didn't want him to be able to cheese him. Why? The coaching staff, the preparation of pick and bans in week 2 was garbage. Was terrible.
It was.
And
Coach
now
of the split, by the way. Coach of the split right there.
Whatever. One bad week and he loses it apparently. No,
I'm not giving any credit to Reaper either. He fell backwards into getting out of that group. So
but here's the thing, and I'm now going to take the mic back,
please,
because I have been waiting all year. I have been waiting all year for this.
Preach.
Weldon Green is a con artist.
Yeah.
He should no longer be a person on this team, notwithstanding his comments about scrim culture and everything about Korea that he said and their nationalistic pride and all that. Grow a pair, dude. Of course they're going to share scrim stuff. Of course they're going to be talking to each other. They're friends. They play in the same league, and of course they don't want some snot-nosed North American team coming in and taking their title away from them. Of course they are. Have you never played sports before? We did that in intramurals. We did that in intramural soccer. Be like, yo, dude, so... Last week we were playing against this team and they brought this new kid in. He's like 7'2". They just stick him in goal. You're not going to score on him. Go to penalties. Like, try and get as many penalties as you can on him. Like, that happens in real sports. And you're a sports psychologist. Come on. Come on, man.
I will say this. As a coach, he broke every single rule of scrim culture that I could possibly imagine. Rule number 1, you never tell anyone who you're scrimming. You just don't do it. You don't talk about it. You don't, make it very clear. You don't ever let results really come out. You just have your scrims because it's work. It's not you getting to advertise how good of a job you're doing. It's you doing your job. The work and the time you get praise for it is when that work turns into results on the big stage. Number 2, you never scrim against anybody with that you are afraid is going to get back to you. When I ran my team in Turkey, and then look, you guys can give me all the crap you want. Imperial didn't, win anything, whatever. I think my team did very well given some crazy circumstances that were going on at the time. But you know what I never did? I never scrimmed against a single team from Turkey. Why? Because I knew they were all friends. And at that time, we had good enough scrim partners in other regions that's where we went. And you know what? If you say to yourself, like, but Korea's the best scrim partners, you're absolutely right. So accept the cost of that. There is an inherent cost in every decision that you make. You could scrim worse teams and not worry about it, or you could scrim better teams and accept that that's about to happen. And by the way, just for the record, I do not believe that TSM, Cloud9, and CLG did not share any notes from scrims with each other.
Yeah.
Those are buddy teams. These guys have been friends forever. It is absolutely ridiculous that you would make any sort of assumptions like, oh man, the Koreans, they did it because they shared results with each other. Yeah, and your Zyra ban came out of nowhere, I'm sure. I bet no one that was scrimming against them at the time made a thing about like, oh man, that Zyra from Core JJ is really good, and so you banned it. That came out of left field. The casters, the guys whose job it is to be prepared for weird things like that, had no idea what they were doing with it until Core JJ brought it out a game later and did really well with it. You knew. And you can tell me, oh, but they played 10 games in solo queue. I looked at those 10 games in solo queue. They weren't anything special, and compared to some other champions that he pulled out in solo queue, it was not his most frequently played in the slightest. No way you waste a ban on it. No way. No way you waste a ban on that and don't ban the Victor. Let me put it that way. You knew that Zyra was that dangerous because someone told you, oh my God, Core JJ Zyra is so good. That's how you knew. And so don't you dare. And number 3, and the most important thing, if you're upset with your scrims, say nothing. That is not anyone else's issue. Certainly not the public's issue. It's why I never respected the Unicorns of Love for going on the rant that they did about like, oh, but they didn't want to scrim us. It's like, shut up. Shut up. I don't care about your problems. I don't care about like, oh man, poor me, I didn't get a scrim partner. You can find a way. You can always find a way. I was part of that scrim channel. They could have found teams to scrim. There were plenty of teams looking forward to scrimming. They might not have been the best quality teams, but you could have tried something. You did not try. You decided to make a public thing about it because you wanted the public who doesn't understand how scrims work to crucify them. And Weldon did the exact same thing. Right here. He just wanted people to say, feel bad for TSM and crucify Korea because they're coming up with their grab bag of excuses.
This isn't even about TSM.
Well.
So I look at
it's Weldon.
This isn't even about TSM. This is about Weldon. And I feel like ever since
TSM didn't do this,
Let me finish this because this is a point that I have made any time that I've discussed Weldon, going all the way back to Spring Split when TSM put so much credit into him about their success going into the end of the split. Oh, we won games because Weldon was here. Oh, we won games because Weldon was here. He convinced Reggie and Doublelift and Bjergsen that they needed him to be successful. I think that the team they put together with the talent they put together was fantastic. I think they would have won that region. I don't think they needed Weldon's mindfulness meditation bull to win that region and to get to Worlds. I don't think they needed it for the number 1 seed. He convinced them that, oh, you need this. You guys need to be better people. We're going to do all this thing. Boo-hoo. Him going out and saying, I told Reggie that I wouldn't put the system in place to make these guys as good as they were, this aggressive, strong, really practiced schedule, unless he paid them more money. That wasn't about, the players are getting paid more money. It was, I, Weldon Green, got Reginald to pay them more money because I wouldn't do this unless he paid them more money. Then you have the balls, after you spend so much time on your YouTube channel, after you spend so much time in TSM Legends, all this time promoting, we do meditation, we do all these, touchy-feely group exercises, which, fine, whatever. I don't think that's what you needed to beat Korea. You have the goddamn audacity to come out and criticize SKT for doing a mindfulness technique that there are people talking about on Reddit and on Twitter saying, I learned that in my high school psych class. That's something that you actually do. Where you say in a response to someone asking a question, hey, would meditation in between games help? And you go, I don't necessarily think it would happen in between 2 games because it's only like 10 minutes, but it has long-term, really good effects. And then you lambaste SKT for that. You, sir, are a con artist. You are a sham. And if you are on a single LCS team next split, I would be highly disappointed in that organization. You know nothing about esports, and you need to get the hell out. Because, quite frankly, I was sick of you after 2 weeks of you being on my team. I can't imagine what you would be like if you were in this scene for another year. I can't imagine it.
Look, I'm going to give you some insider information here. He runs an agency, Good Games. I think it's Good Game Coaching. I got to double check that. He has his own thing where it's a website you can sign up. My organization signed me up while I was coaching there. The whole idea is that it's supposed to connect you to a community of coaches that are all supposed to help teach you, and figure it out. And really help you grow as a team. And the whole thing is he has this whole lecture series, and you can go back and watch all these lectures. And I got to be honest, I learned absolutely nothing from him that wasn't common sense. And he charges a subscription on the guys that one day his program will make you a certified coach. That's his whole selling point, is that he will give you a certification. He, Weldon on high, shall certify you as a coach worth being hired by other teams if you go through his section. He has this whole meeting plan where he's going to talk with you one-on-one and talk about your dreams and aspirations. And by the way, I never heard of anyone who actually got that meeting with him. When I looked at the schedule, it was booked for the entirety of the year. And when I asked on the forum what was up with that, because I got this message and there doesn't seem to be any time available, they ignored me completely. The forums were dead. There was nothing there. Weldon was not interacting with that site with anything other than these Twitch streams that were basically seminars about why he's so smart to do things the way that he does. And I swear to you, at the end of the day, you do not need to believe in Weldon. The Weldon effect came in because anytime you make a change, there is a euphoria afterwards. You feel better just from the extent that there's something new, and you have to believe as a team that that's going to be the X factor that makes you better. That's how this works. It is a placebo for a reason, and it's a good placebo. I'll give him credit for that. He does a really good job of making it sound like he knows what he's doing. But there's a reason that I do not take anything he says at face value anymore. And I got downvoted for saying this, but I'm going to say this now. I put it on Reddit. You know what they call the person who is at the lowest part of his grade in a sports psychology field? A psychologist. That's what it's called. The worst person who still graduates gets the same title as the best. And the guy does not understand. I mean, Cyrenos even put out how shocking it was that he made a comment of, not understanding that taking breaks away from the game was a benefit. Guess what? I got thrown into a coaching job I wasn't even supposed to have in Istanbul, where there were bombs going off pretty much every day, where sometimes we wouldn't have more than bread to eat every once in a while. And even I, with all of those things, reminded my players to take breaks every once in a while.
That's the thing I don't understand.
It's not hard.
That's the thing I don't understand. Weldon made this huge point of, we're practicing so much more. They aren't doing other things. They aren't streaming as much. It's League of Legends 24/7, which is so counterintuitive to anything that I've ever heard about psychologists saying how you want to be successful at. It's like the number one thing is take a break. Take a break. 24 hours. Like, relax. Do something that completely takes your mind off of everything. And maybe some of it's hyperbole to get us fans pumped up and happy about everything. But I want to make this point, because I don't want people to come away from this rant as I dislike sports psychology. I feel that there is a place. But any time that it seems successful, that people really talk about it being successful, TV shows purport it as this is a success. It is always when it's that one little thing. They need that one last little advantage to get over the hump, and that's what will make them successful. They need to figure out, what's my tell? I'm doing everything right. I just can't seem to catch the ball. It's a mind thing. Mm-hmm. Bjergsen knows that mechanically he is almost as good as Faker. They all know we are just as good mechanically as the Koreans. It's not a mental thing. There's not some mental block on it. It's that they're ineffective at their practice. They don't have enough experience in these high-intensity situations against the best teams in the world because, quite frankly, they don't play the best teams in the world.
Right.
And Reggie, this is right to you, buddy, because I know you watch this show. I see your comments and your tweets about it all the time. This is right to you. I'm going to give you some advice. And dude, you don't have to fly me and my family out from Finland and get us visas and all this jazz. I'm going to tell you something right now. If you want to be a world champion, what you need to do is you need to go buy a second team. And you need to go buy a second team that is good enough to make it to Worlds and could possibly win Worlds given some things. You need to have 10 players underneath your banner that all have one goal, which is to win Worlds, that all have the talent to win Worlds, that all have the dedication to win Worlds, that only care about winning Worlds. And they need to be good enough. You can't go get Arc second and be like, all right, Bjergsen, play against Arc second for the next 6 months. That'll get you good enough. No, go buy SKT. If you want to win Worlds, go buy that SKT roster. You have them play against each other. You don't have them play against anybody else. And that's how you will perfect your style. That is how you get your players good enough at the game that they can go in there, they can actually win a world championship. You want to win a world championship, you take that sister team thing that the Koreans used to do to the next level. And if you have to go half and half because they want to have playing time in the LCS, So be it. Just make sure you get out of NA. But you want to win a world championship, you go buy another team that is capable of making the world championships, and your players will be the best players that they possibly can be. Not because some psychologist is sitting there saying, all right, guys, let's talk about our feelings now, okay? That's the route to success. That is what you need to do if you want to be a number one organization in the world. Go buy Faker, go buy Duke, go buy Blank, go buy all 5 of them, and have your team play against them for the next 6 months. And I'm willing to bet that you'll at least make the grand finals, if not win. Walter
if
out.
Only there was, this system in which teams could cooperate, like, say, a family would, perhaps even sisters, and live in a house together and practice against each other all the time, and that would be an entirely legal, okay thing to do. If only such a system was allowed to exist, but my competitive integrity symbols are tingling. I guess that would be somehow bad and wrong, despite the fact that every single possible situation that we have seen sister teams work, whether it's StarCraft, Heroes of the Storm, whatever other game you want to point to, it always ends well, and there's almost never any of the corruption things that Riot cites. But because of that, you can't get 2 world-class teams. How are you going to pay these guys enough money to sit on the bench all year, because you're not allowed to own 2 teams?
I hear Jerry Buss might be looking for a League of Legends team.
I mean,
go get that Lakers money.
Look, at the end of the day, the dream is, that you would somehow be able to play Korea on a regular basis. It's not logistically possible with a team in North America. You can say, with an infinite amount of money, sure, maybe they buy players like that, but there are enough players that would want to go ahead and give it a shot. And I actually really like Cargilicus's thing in the chat. Why can't teams go play in other regions anymore? If TSM wants to say, you know what, we're dropping out of the LCS. We're going to go into the LCK Challenger League. We're going to fight our way into the LCK, and we're going to play against the best teams in the world that way. I'm willing to take that hit because I want to win a championship. Monte Cristo and Thorin used to say that all the time. That is how you become the best. You want to be the best? Play against the best. Learn from the best. And if Riot allowed teams to do that, they could do it. But Riot has purposely created a scenario now in which you're not allowed to have sister teams. You're not allowed to go out and have teams, even if they're in separate regions. You're not allowed to own 2 teams. You're not allowed to move your team over to another region so that you could be playing against better teams. TSM is stuck having only 1 team, and the second backup team would have to be in Korea. You
guys are completely missing the point. You guys are completely missing the point.
Spend China or whatever else to get the best players in the world under the TSM banner. Reggie doesn't have that much money, and every single one of the players, if they were truly worthy of winning worlds,
I don't care. I don't care what the cost is. I'm not saying, is it financially feasible? That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. If you want to win a championship, you go buy 5 world-class capable players. 5 players that if you had them on their own LCS team and you put them in, could make worlds themselves and could potentially win the world championship themselves. That is going to be the only way that a North American team does that, because there are not 10 teams. There aren't 5 teams in North America right now that could contest for a world championship. There was 1. Cloud9 isn't going to be contesting for a world championship this year. I don't care that they got to quarterfinals. They aren't good enough. CLG is not going to be contesting for a world championship this year. Immortals probably wouldn't have been contesting for a world championship. So that means all that scrim time, all that LCS regular season practice is a waste, because you aren't going against someone that is going to put you to your limit day in and day out, like SKT and Rocks do to each other every time they scrim and every time they play against each other in the regular season. So, Reginald, sir, if you want to win, you find the money to do that. But at the end of the day, I know that despite everything you say to us fans, you're a businessman, and you care about your team being successful and making a profit and long-term longevity about your team and their careers and all that jazz. And I've got no problem with that. But if you truly, truly, truly want to win a world championship, you need to go buy that second team capable of winning a world championship, and you need to just practice against each other for the next 8 months. Because let me tell you what, I've seen it happen in another game. I've seen an organization do that where their team needed that little bit of an extra edge to try and win that world championship. So the owner went out and bought a second team that could win a world championship. And oh my lord, they both placed top 4 at the world championships. It was amazing. I can tell you from experience that it works.
And Riot's made it illegal to do any of the things you just named.
They don't need to play in the LCS. They literally don't need to play in the LCS.
They can't
don't
play in the LCK.
Who cares?
Like,
That's
you
not
are
the
never,
point.
you
That's
are
not the
never
point.
going to find, Walter.
That's not the point.
Calm down.
That's not the point.
You will never be able to find 5 world-class players who are all capable of winning worlds, who are happy sitting on the bench for a full year.
Money talks.
There is no, Reggie does not have anywhere near the amount of money.
That's what I'm saying. He might have to go get Jerry Buss to do it.
China can spend $1.5 million over 2 years for a player. You can't get the residuals on it. Even if TSM won, it wouldn't be worth the money because the World Championship isn't worth that much. It doesn't work.
Then
there's
right
no
there.
financial way to do it until Riot agrees to let the borders fall and let teams like TSM say, you know what, we will take our licks, we will fight our way into the LCK, and we will battle our way in, and that's how we'll be the best. Because you know what? In every other esport, guess what? We had a North American team participating in the Gold League in Heroes of the Storm. Counter-Strike Global Offensive has tournaments where Europe and North America plays against each other all the time.
Yep.
These regional boundaries, these strict little boxes that Riot puts these teams in, does not exist in any other sport, in any other esport, except for this one. And in this one, you are 100% correct in saying it is limiting the potential of so many teams that could go on to do much more. And until that's fixed, until Riot cares enough to fix it, that's how things are going to be. I think that's as good a note as any to end part 1 on. For those of you who are listening at home after the fact, thank you for listening to part 1. There's going to be part 2 where we're actually going to break down each of the quarterfinal series. SoundCloud.com/esportsroughdrafts. iTunes, if you search for the Rough Draft section on there, those will be your audio-only versions. The video versions will be on YouTube if you search for Rough Drafts Podcast. We still don't quite have enough to get our own URL yet, but we're very close. We really appreciate every subscription that you guys give us. And in fact, I've done a good job. I've tried to go back and comment. Every time you guys make a comment on any of our videos, we do respond. We do appreciate it. It means a lot to us. For those of you who are on the live stream with us right now, we are going to take a quick 3-minute break. I think Walter and I both need to cleanse our palates. Me from Taiwan, Walter from Weldon. We're all going to be in a better place because we get to talk about fun things now. Now we get to talk about quarterfinals. So we will be back in 5 minutes, we'll say? 5 minutes. So come back for that, and for the podcast listeners, goodbye.